Welcome to the Vida Stories podcast. Your family faith story is worth creating and passing down to the next generation. Tune in to the Vida Stories podcast as we cover topics on developing a generational faith, creating adventurous memories, and a legacy worth fighting for. I'm your host, Elizabeth Escobar. Now let's dive in. On today's episode, we have a special guest. Her name is Frances Jean, who is the founder of High Performance Women Mastermind and a certified high performance coach, where the mission is to help female entrepreneurs achieve long lasting happiness, well being, and impact. Frances has helped over 1,000 people over 12 years as a trauma-informed therapist and coach, and as a daughter of immigrant parents who taught her to stay small through her life. She always felt she was meant for more than what she calls a cog in a machine kind of life. So she hired a business coach, confronted her inherited fears, and left her corporate six-figure job to start over as an entrepreneur, where she discovered what it meant to be truly successful, which is, in her definition, creating balance, happy abundance without burnout and exhaustion. Frances is also a student pastor and married to a pastor of over 18 years. Frances, welcome to the Vida Stories podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, so thrilled. We're finally making this happen. But I would love if we could start off with this term because, like I mentioned to you, I was like, wait a minute, I've never heard of this. What does this mean? Cog in a machine. Break that down for us, what that meant specifically to your story. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'll start by saying I think a lot of people live like this, and it was definitely like this for me working at my last job where it felt like I was like dying inside,
Mm,
not, literally dying physically, but I have the sense that, like, maybe it's true for you or if you're listening, where in the way that God uniquely created you, there's a lot of people who try to fit their lives into a certain mold and it
mm,
doesn't fit. And there's like this constant, like life draining thing that's happening of trying to like squeeze yourself to do something and be someone that is not how God uniquely created you to be. And
mm.
so I was working in government, and if you've ever worked in government before, or, any big institution where I worked, it takes about 15 years for a small change to happen.
Sure.
The institution's priorities, like, were far more important than the value of the people there. It was like, so
Right.
like, I say cog in a machine because we were just there to make the institution function, even if it wasn't functioning well. And there were, of course, a lot of things that could be improved because things only live on when they adapt. And so there's,
Right.
not that much adapting or flexibility, which I think is one of the most important traits to have for organizations and for people now, especially after COVID or during COVID.
Yeah.
So I felt like the life was being squeezed out of me. And actually, I'll backtrack to the fact that I actually felt like even physically I was deteriorating because
Wow.
my immune system, never in my life have I not been able to recover from like, because I have 3 young kids, so I would like catch something and just like not recover. And I remember lying there because so much of the time I went to work even with fevers because I was getting in
Mm,
trouble with like how often I was sick.
wow.
And the culture created a burnout. It was like a burnout culture. I still have many team members who are on sick leave. Like I left that years ago, but there's like still we don't know what happened to them. But multiple
Mm,
people on my team got cancer. So it was like it was actually like physically manifesting as this like
yeah.
chronic illness. So like it felt like I was emotionally, mentally dying inside, doing this work that like didn't make sense. So I was counseling people on welfare who had enough money to have, like, a can of beans every 3 days, and so they were actually, like, starving to death, like, literally
Mm,
starving to death, and I had to go in and counsel them And I didn't have the okay to, go to them. What would make sense is go to them, bring them food, and then do the counseling session or make sure, they have shelter and heating and things. So these people were like starving to death, didn't even have beds to sleep on or like, basic life necessities. And I had to do this. And so it was very stressful. They were suicidal commonly.
Mm.
And yeah, and so I was getting sicker and sicker, and I knew that this life that I was making really good money, pensioned, the best benefits, and for a lot of people looking on the inside, for immigrant parents, it's like, oh, you've arrived, like just stay
Right.
exactly where you are, don't
Yeah,
move
don't rock the boat.
for the next few decades. Just keep your head down, do your work, doesn't matter how hard it is, and I know
Yeah.
there's a time for that, but
Yeah.
my body was screaming. I believe like with, our bodies tell the truth about how we're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
So my body was screaming that I needed a different way of life. And so I gave in my 5 weeks notice and I quit, and I didn't exactly know what would happen next, but I knew that it was going to cut my life short if I stayed where I was. Like literally, it was going to cut my longevity. I had 3 young kids. So I'm like, clearly, this life is not working for me. So hope that answers your question. Cognitive machine of like squeezing yourself into a mold, into something like that doesn't make sense for you
Mm.
just because it's expected of you. And it's for my parents. They were very happy I was in that job, and like very alarmed that I left it, and probably
Yeah.
still trying to cope with that today.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, you're talking about generational approval, right?
Yeah,
Which it's almost like a
yeah,
little bit of like an elephant in the room, that isn't
yeah.
it's like we know it's there. They're all like unwritten rules, like that what the expectation is. And I don't know, are you the oldest?
I'm the eldest of 3 daughters, so
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So then you
Mm-hmm.
have that
Yeah.
as well. I've seen that lately a lot too, and there's been like different reports that have kind of came up. So, but what you're describing is, I mean, really to the point of deterioration, and we're not talking that you're, in your final stages of life, or
Right.
it's like you
Right.
you should have been thriving
Yeah.
and full of just joy, and it wasn't. It just wasn't. And so I'd love for you to just even talk about what, you mentioned a few things, right? Like one, like
Mhm.
just the sickliness, right? Like the constant sickliness. And I think that if we're honest, especially in Western society, we have just unintentionally adopted a sickly culture. Like it's just like,
Mhm.
the common flu, the common this, the common that, like, oh, that rash. Oh yeah, me too.
Mhm.
Or, oh, I have
Right.
this going on, in my
Yeah.
hair, and, just like all these like random type of ailments, right? Where I sometimes think like even 100 years ago, like generations prior, they'd be looking at us like, what in the world?
What's
Like, what is
happening?
wrong with y'all?
Yeah, my
Right?
grandma says well, she used to yeah, when she was here, she used to say that. She didn't get aches and pains till she was, like, much, much older.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's something about how we are living this
Yes.
human experience, right? How
Yeah.
we are doing our mothering, how we are doing
Yeah.
our family life, that it's no longer breeding joy and longevity and just homeostasis in a sense. And
Yeah.
I
So
love
out
that
of
you
balance.
even mentioned about your children as well, because it almost in that decision it sounded like, well, it's not necessarily a decision for today. This is a decision for tomorrow. It's for them. Like I have them here, but I can't really, there's a disconnect happening, right? So
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about what that change, that decision, what impact that has had on you as a mother, and with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Of course, I'll just start by saying, of course, entrepreneurship is not easy. It's actually, in many ways more challenging than, being in a job where you just can kind of mindlessly,
Yeah.
go in and do your time, but at a cost. And then, so I love the time freedom I have now. I create my own schedule. So right now I run 2 businesses. I have a private practice as a therapist, working with second generation immigrants to help them break those cycles. And then I also, as you already mentioned, I facilitate a mastermind for female entrepreneurs. to
Mm.
help them create long-term impact while being happier and healthier than everyone else through a proven high performance coaching curriculum. I um I honestly feel like the freedom I have to create my own schedule and to do whatever I want with my time or to build my business like slowly or very quickly or to like
Mm.
it. I love all those pieces of freedom. And I know some people don't love that much freedom because it's also responsibility, but
Yeah.
it's such a good fit for me that I get to decide or I get to pivot and make all those decisions about I get to create exactly the life that I want. And so with my kids, I don't take time off work to go do something with my kids. Like this Friday, I'm taking Friday off and I'm taking them to Niagara Falls, which
Mm.
is like this beautiful, natural wonder. And it's just because I can.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten to be much more it's not perfect, but I have the room to be really present with them. I can do whatever I want with my schedule. I just recently read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, and one day I could have
Mm.
a 4-hour work week. I think I really
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
Like, it's all the steps. I'm like, I could do this. Like, what what the book
Mm.
talks about. And so it just gives me a sense of like freedom and hope for not living that cognitive machine life where I have to slave away at building something that I don't even really believe in. It doesn't really make sense the way things are set up. Where I can like just, work in my 5% that no one else can do and like eventually delegate
Mm.
everything
Wow.
else, just be the CEO, teach my kids about entrepreneurship, and also spend as much quality time with them. And so I schedule quality time with them like right into my schedule because I believe if it's not on your calendar, it won't happen. And so I've gotten more diligent with that all my, major life arenas, my most important things to me, I have a lot of time for.
Mm.
And I never feel like, um, I don't have to do someone else's agenda and feel like I'm kind of wasting my life. I'm doing exactly what I choose and what I want to do. So if that
And
answers
that's,
your
I
question.
mean, even that alone, like that's huge, I think, even for the previous generation, right? Because
Oh,
they may not
yeah.
initially recognize it because it's just like, what in the world? Like, you're being so selfish. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think over time, then there's like, oh, I didn't know that that was even possible, right? Because it was like this, there was just
Exactly.
the one path that was
Exactly.
presented or told, or just, it's like we're all swimming in this pool, if you may, and really going against the grain. Like you're right. Like initially there's a ton of hurdles that you're just like, this is actually harder. What the heck?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I wasn't thinking that was gonna be the case, but
Yeah.
when going past it, the fruit behind it is so fulfilling, I would say, because it is a personal fruit and like just what you described, right? Like that tangible example, like Friday, this is what we're doing. We're having these really we're gonna go and have incredible adventures and
Yes.
family memories. And
Yeah.
this is what they're gonna remember. Like I love what you
Yes.
even just touched on because it reminds me a lot of even my interactions with my kids. Like
Mm.
they're just like, oh, what's that? Oh, okay, is that's this type of like the type of like language and terminology or just things that they have been exposed to. I'm like, there is no way they would never be able to be exposed to something like this in a
Mm.
traditional like school setting, or just like if I was gone for like, X amount of hours at whatever profession.
Yeah.
And even talking through like the you mentioned about the participants that you were serving, in your prior position. And I mean, it even brought me back to like my background is in nonprofit, and
Okay.
that is very commonplace to hear about like compassion fatigue. And it's just like, that just happens. Like, don't worry, like you'll get over the hump. But it's just like you see those that they just like now they function out of that place. Like it's like autopilot in all aspects. And I'm just like, how are you? Like, is that like that's not what we went into these professions for? Like, that's not really like you're not really making any change if you're just like
Yeah,
poker
numbed out.
face almost.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like numb, right? Like,
Yep.
that's not transformational. That is not healing to
Mhm.
anybody. But anyhow, I was gonna mention too, like just even seeing like your description of kind of like a my life in this instance, my life today, like your whole countenance, like your face and everything, like you lit up, like when you're talking about like what you're
Yeah.
doing and like even talking about the hard parts, right? Like just like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard, but like
Yeah.
but this is like the part that's so gratifying and this is like the joy that has came through that. So maybe talk us a little bit more about that. Talk to us a little bit more about that in the sense of why it's so critical and why it's so important to dream again, to
Mhm.
step into those pieces of our calling that I know you and I have talked about this, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
back, when you're 18 or 15 years old, it was like really easy to believe in these big dreams and
Yeah.
these big aspirations. It's a whole nother thing to, it's almost, I feel almost like riskier to do it when you're
Mhm.
in the middle in the thick of just everyday life, family life, the kids, home, like all of it, right? But
Yes.
having that courage to say yes and do it again.
Yes. Yeah. This is something that I learned. We share the same business coach, incredible person. Something that he was talking about a few months back was that, we all have an assignment here on earth.
Mm,
And like we all have important work to do to make a difference, to leave a legacy that is like uniquely for us to do. And when we wake up every day, like I think the best emotion in that whole feelings wheel is excitement. If you can feel excitement about your life and what you're doing, and it's like infused with hope. Like that's what helps a person to feel fully alive, to live in the best quality of life. And unfortunately, very few people I know live like they're fully alive and like just, going full force after that God-given, God-sized dream that has been deposited in their hearts. But most people are walking around aimlessly, lost, just trying to survive, today, numbed out on screens and social
mm,
media. And, social media is not all bad, but there are
yeah.
things to it that form us and change our brains when we do it without limits. So I think it's really important to be asking yourself like all the time. This is something I asked in my mastermind yesterday. A fun question is, if your future self, like imagine a version of you 10 years from now who was much smarter than you, much stronger than you, and she was already manifesting that God-sized dream, like she was living in it, and she came to you right now and looked at your life, what would that future self like say to you that you would need to change right now? Probably she would tell you that like to go after your dreams, to take risks, to take courageous
Yeah.
action every day, to face your fears, to maybe even let your fears inform your growth plan for your life, because our fears
Wow.
often point to exactly where we need to grow in order to move to the next level. And that scripture that says God moves us from glory to glory, I believe like we're not meant to stay here like as we are now in this version of us. We're meant to have our character forged as we face our fears and we develop more confidence and vision and we help more people. And there's a momentum. We're never meant to stay where we are. So for people who don't even have a life vision, I would say start with writing your eulogy. I did this
Mm,
recently at a entrepreneur retreat just a few weeks back. And I've done it before, but I did it again. And I got so much clarity about where I'm going with my life. Like I wrote my
wow.
eulogy in incredible detail and we all had to read it to each other. Most people were crying and it was a very emotional exercise, like reading it out loud. And
Yeah.
I just, even though, at the time that I did that exercise, I was facing some really big setbacks and like processing a lot of things that were really hard to process. But doing that exercise has helped me realize like this is all worth it. Like it's
Yeah.
worth it to go through the pain and the fire of entrepreneurship, where your character is forged so that you become someone who perseveres and your character is perfected. Hopefully you take on more of the traits of God to have
Wow.
self-control and discipline and hope, and have so much faith, hope, and love, which is the only thing that's going to pass through from this life into the next. Faith, hope, and love. And it's through the trials that we get forged into becoming someone who has more of that, of those things that are going to be eternal, that stay with us forever. And so there's many trials, but one of the blessings of going after your dream is that there's going to be so much like fulfillment, and your sense of even your sense of yourself, because our happiness, there's so much research that our happiness is tied to like what we give to others.
Mm.
And the way that most people live now, where it's like, I need to like hoard my money because I'm like barely able to pay the bills. But actually, if
Mm.
you were to, even in your financial difficulty, even if you were to take a step now and start taking small steps of generosity, you would actually open up doors for that, the sowing of generosity, and you'd reap probably increase in your business or whatever, your finances. That I hear this from people all the time who are so successful. They say, I started to be generous, like even when I had nothing and I was like living on my sister's couch, and I thought $500, if I just had $500, it would change everything.
Yeah.
They started to become generous then. And no matter what,
Mm.
and if you start to take small steps toward your vision now, to be more generous and open-hearted, and to take on the qualities of who that future self would be, of you 10 years from now, who had actualized and started manifesting in a big way that dream, you can move towards that today.
Yeah.
And so a good question to ask, like sometimes if you're tempted to quit or just sort of like shrink yourself and take the easier path, it's like, is that going to move you to like that where you want to be 10 years from now? Absolutely
Mm.
not. That is not the road that's paved with comfort. It's the
Yeah.
road where you have to keep facing your fears. And once you face these fears, it's probably going to be a whole new set of fears, because you're not going to be afraid of these things anymore. But God's probably going to give you more responsibility and influence and platform, but there's going to be bigger resistance and, like bigger trials coming. So it's
Yeah.
like all proportional. Yeah. Go after your vision. That's like,
Yes.
it'll be hard. It'll be really hard for you it's hard either way. Like it's hard for you to play small and to deal with like anxiety and depression and hating your life. And it's hard to go after your dream, but at the end of your life, your biggest regret will be that you didn't go after your dream and you just did what was
Mm-hmm.
expected and you just conformed. And you don't have to end up in that version of you where you're regretting like most people do. At the end of their lives, they're like, I
Yeah.
wish I had just not done what others expected of me, or I wish that I had let
Yeah.
myself be happier and I had gone after my dreams.
Man, I mean, even as it's like you're saying things, and then I was like thinking, and I'm just like, I'm right there with you, sister. Like,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
100%. And it's true. It's just, it's a matter of just, you got to pick your heart at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day. Both ways are going to be hard. Just have to accept it. But there's a different kind, like even yesterday, like I was getting ready for bed and everything. And I'm like, I am so, like, I was just tired.
Yeah,
Like I'm sleepy, like I'm ready to go to bed. Right. But it's
yeah.
a different kind of tired when you're going after the things that you're
Mm-hmm.
co-creating with God. It's
Yes,
a different kind of
absolutely.
tired when you are holding the burden of something that doesn't really belong to you, that you're just like, I'm doing this because I have to, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
like, or you think you have to. I mean, if we're being honest, right? Like, what are the choices? What are the decisions that you need to make so that it doesn't have to be the have to? Right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, I'm sure
And
you had to kind of come to terms with that as well,
yeah.
like with yourself and then even with those that are in your mastermind, where it's like, okay, we need to take a step back. Let's
Mm-hmm.
revisit this. Let's assess the big dream, the big vision, and is it in alignment? Because many of us, if we're
Mm.
being honest, we are not in alignment. And that's
Yeah.
why we're experiencing all these ailments, whether physical or
Yes.
spiritual or, just disunity, like within family life and all of that. And there's like you said, our body's telling on us, our emotions
Yes.
are telling on us.
Always.
Yeah, your life is telling on you,
It
but
is.
it's just a matter of, are you paying attention to what your life is trying to tell you? Because
Mhm.
it's saying one thing, but you're just like avidly going in the opposite direction, whether it is because of people pleasing or, expectations. Maybe they came from childhood and you haven't done the work to address, like, okay, why am I still functioning this way? Like, what
Yeah.
was happening here? But I can already hear internally, like a listener or like somebody that's gonna watch, like it just kind of have that pushback of like, that sounds nice, Francis. Okay, like
Yeah.
that's cute,
Yeah.
but I have XYZ debt,
Yes.
or I'm a single mom, or
Yeah.
like fill in the blank. It doesn't matter what their circumstance is. What would you say to those that are just kind of like, I would say almost more like that skeptical, like, I'm not in it. Like, that sounds like real nice pie in the sky type of thing,
Yeah.
like that's pretty,
Yeah.
but I have all these things in front of me that need to be addressed before I just go and decide to be a dreamer, before I just go and decide to go after this big vision that you guys are so, gung ho talking about, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, we've bought in clearly, right? But there are those that are still on the other end of like, like once there, right? Like kind of going back to that version of Francis of like the
Yeah.
hesitation and just the like,
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's so funny? I have people from my last, place of work that call me and they're just like amazed that I left and they really want to leave, but they, like you said, like they can't because it's like they have to be receiving those like salaried paychecks and they have their pension, etc. And it's like I've left that life. I'm like somewhere else and they're like calling over to me just they're saying they can't leave, but they wanna hear about what life is like after. And I was just saying that, you could do whatever you choose. No one is we have the freedom here that we get to choose every single day who we become, what path we take, what kind of life we're creating. We are creating a life, even if you don't do it intentionally. You're creating a life where, let's say, there's a lot of comfort and everything's about convenience. You're creating a life for yourself where maybe you don't really put yourself in positions where you become better, where when there's no challenge, where there's no struggle, it's really hard to become better. And so that's the blessing and the opportunity in what looks like challenge or failure and struggle is like so if you're listening, you're a single mom or like you're struggling to pay the bills or you're an entrepreneur, it's just been so hard. I would say we need a paradigm shift around how we relate to trial and pain and struggle. And maybe instead of focusing your life on avoiding the struggle, it's time to honor the struggle and ask yourself, like, who do I want to be, like, in the middle of this struggle? Do I want to be the kind of person, do I want to model to my kids that we honestly, like, when I think about really hard things that I've faced in my life, even sometimes when pain felt unbearable, like emotional pain, I'm grateful now I went through those things because otherwise I'd be a lot more superficial of a person, honestly. Like
yeah,
a lot less relatable, a lot less empathetic and really grateful for the journey. And it was really all the struggle that I've gone through in my life that has resulted in a depth that's been created in me where I can, out of compassion, serve people, do work with people that are really sitting in the dark and hopeless. And I know what that's like. And I can sit with them in the dark. And I also can show them the way out because I've done like an insane amount of healing and personal development to learn how to climb out of that. Out of
yeah,
and so Yeah, so no one's twisting your arm to have to go after your dreams. And I'd also say that the pain of there will be pain that comes from living a comfortable life. The pain of not changing,
hmm
pain of staying in stuck mindsets, the pain of being in a victim mentality where like I don't have to do anything, like everyone else has to change for me, and that won't happen. Like no one's gonna come save you and change it. Like you're the only one who can change the sort of like the thermostat of your emotions. And the quality of your emotions is the quality of your life. The quality of your relationships is the quality of your life. Those are all things completely within your power. And if you don't do anything to take responsibility for it, your life is probably going to get worse and worse. Like by default, we get worse when we don't set intentions to get better, because our survival brain takes over and we just like hunker down and we like focus on, we become more selfish, more greedy,
Yeah.
more selfish, self-absorbed, and that actually will continue to lower your happiness level until inevitably you start to like hate your life, and it erodes your self-esteem and your relationships. So it's not necessarily easier to be comfortable. You're going to
Hmm.
eventually like experience the misery of living a life that's too comfortable. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's like kind of sad as well.
Yeah.
It's like really sad.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
sometimes the thought is like when we're thinking of a miserable life or something that's really unbearable, like sure, there are, very milestone type things that happen, like a
Mhm.
death of a loved one
Of
or,
course.
maybe going through a divorce, like right, like these big things that are markers that it's like absolutely those are, that is the pain of life. And
Yes.
yes, those things absolutely hurt. But I think what we're alluding to or trying to unpack more so is like, as you were describing it, I was being reminded of my backyard that is so unkept at the moment that it's like now that we're stepping into a new season where it's just like, because it's like it was winter and it's like we didn't touch it. Right? And
Mm.
then now it's like, okay, the sun is coming out and it's like the sun is shining on this plant that is dead because it hasn't been tended to. Like we've done nothing to it, right? Or like, oh, those toys that were left over from summertime are
Yeah.
just, like why? Because it was untouched, unkept,
Yep.
undealt with. It was just like, bye. We just kind of like close the blinds on it,
Yeah.
and I think we metaphorically do the same in
Yes.
our life,
Yep.
and
Absolutely.
then we're wondering why there's these hiccups or these like the aches and pains in a sense, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like they're really like they're there as indicators more than anything. They're not
Yes.
there to harm us, but it's like that check engine, like, hey, hi, remember me? In the time during kind of like that COVID pandemic season, I remember there was a number of honestly either like leaders or like people in like Christian music or I mean, and just all across, they were like, "Oh, so and so passed," or and not necessarily always having to do with COVID, but it was
Yeah.
like either, whatever. They just lived a long life and all of this. And I remember reflecting back and thinking through, like, man, this person did X, Y, and Z. This was their contribution to
Yes.
music, to writing, to this, that, or the other. Man, I looked at their life for inspiration about this or that. And I think about that often where I'm just like, wow, where is the next Fred
Mm.
Rogers? Where is
Mhm.
the next, fill in the blank, right? Like these great names of those that even like somebody like Fred Rogers, such a great example. Like he was very vocal about he never wanted to be in media and television. He was like, that was the last thing I wanted to do. Like I was
Wow.
a trained minister. He wanted nothing to do with it. But the reason why he went into it was because he wholeheartedly believed in making a change in the next generation. He was like, who's gonna step in the gap? Who's gonna do something about this?
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, well, I don't like the camera, but here I go. And so I think that that was the
Yeah.
hard, right? That was the stepping into the hard and just still using his giftings and his ability to like till this day, anytime I hear the music or like just a little clip of, of the shows, I'm like already welling up in tears, right? Because there was
Yes.
something so profound about like he was living in his giftings and
Mhm.
shown it to the world, right? And impacted so many lives. And so I think that is, I love to think about kind of those types of individuals that it's like, wow, okay, they stepped out in discomfort. As we are wrapping up this episode, telling us a little bit about maybe those kind of those baby steps that you were saying, right? There may be those that are just like, yes, I agree, but I can just like dip my toe. That's like as far as I can go right
Yeah.
now. Like I
Yeah.
want to like test out the waters, but like what are some things that I can do as as, a person of faith, as a family person, we've got the kids, we've got, the full life and all, but I want to do it, but I need to just begin by, just taking a temperature check of the water.
Yeah, yeah. So something that I would recommend is I would recommend you do this every week, actually. If that eulogy exercise appealed to you, I think some people actually even read it every single day. Donald Miller does.
Wow.
And he has that in his journals and his worksheets that he gives out to his students. Having something written, like your life manifesto or a eulogy that you're looking at least once a week and sort of revising, so that the difference between high performers who are sustainably successful and healthy and underperformers is that high performers are spending like a couple of hours more per week just on reflecting on their life and making those pivots. So everybody makes mistakes, right? Like we all get off track, but
Mm,
it's just about shortening the time between you get off track and you get back on, to align it back to, what's the vision for yourself in your intimate partner relationship with your kids, in your maybe church ministry, and the major areas of your life. You should have a vision written down, even if it's like a couple of sentences, writing it down. Like, for example, 1 year from now, like this is what this area of my life will look like. This is what my marriage will look like 1 year from now, and revisiting that regularly, and then actually like putting it into your calendar. For example, if you're not spending enough time together, automating like a weekly marriage meeting or check a date night or something, so that now there's like an automation, like you're going to do it every week, and it's the
yeah.
accumulation of that cumulative effect of that time spent together. That's going to start bringing you closer, strengthening the bond. So you absolutely need to clarify. That's the first thing. Clarify your vision. Get a ton of clarity on exactly what you want your life to look like. Write it down. Share it with someone, because now that you've shared it with
Mm,
someone, now there's some stake in it. Now you can't just like hide and pretend it never happened. Now
yeah.
someone might ask you about it, and that is a really good thing. It's why I ask the members of my mastermind when we do something like this, like I'm like, everybody share. Like
Yeah.
and we're gonna follow up with you. So yeah. So
That's
that's what I
so,
would
so
say.
good. Oh my goodness. I'm thrilled for all the things the hard that you have said yes to, because we are now recipients, even just in this podcast. So thank you so much for
Thank you
being
so
here.
much.
We are going to make sure to link all of Francis's places and spaces where you can get more connected with her programs and all the incredible things that she is stepping into. So be on the lookout for that. And thank you so much for each and every one of you that has been tuning in, whether you are watching us or listening to us. We will see each other next time. Nos vemos.